Hi, it's the B101.5 Care-a-thon, our third annual here, and we're at Children's Hospital, and we're with Mark Miller, and Mark, his daughter, is actually here at Children's. Just got to spend some time with the beautiful Chloe. Chloe is 12 years old now? Yeah.
Almost 13.
And Chloe came here on Friday night, Friday evening,
Yeah.
and she had a lot going on, and still does have a lot going on. Mark, tell everybody what she had going on. She had flu, strep,
And pneumonia. Very serious pneumonia, serious flu, and strep is always serious. Started on Monday. She was going to school every day, and she basically had cold symptoms. She was just tired. She would come home. She was tired. She would like take a bath in the day and almost fall asleep in the bath. But we've seen that before. She just gets tired. We let her rest some more. And she actually went to school. I showed you a photo from Friday. She was at school, happy. And on Friday night, she had a fever of 104, about 100, close to 105. And so suddenly she was in the hospital with that combination of pneumonia, fever, flu, and strep.
all three of these things at one time. I mean, that's scary. That's crazy. And you guys had to be like, come here, and had to say, have you guys ever seen all three of these at one time? What do you do to treat this? She basically went into, her body went into a shock.
Yeah, it's called sepsis shock. So there's sepsis is a very serious infection. You can have either sepsis or severe sepsis, or in this case, septic shock. And she had septic shock, and it basically means that your body's working so hard to fight that infection that your organs basically shut down. In her case, it was mostly her lungs. She's still operating pretty much with just one lung is operating right, and it's got a fluid that they're working on, but she's really come a long way. We took her to our local ER, which is 5 minutes from our house.
Yeah.
The good news is they're staffed by children's doctors, so that's our local ER. But when they started seeing that she was not responsive, even though she didn't have a fever at the time, they were just looking at her symptoms. They knew immediately she needed to be at Children's. I was actually out of town that night when all this was happening, and when my wife told me we're going to the hospital, I said, which hospital? And she said, Children's. I was relieved because I just know this is the right place for her.
I got to see Chloe for a little bit today, and the pictures that you were showing me from Friday, and then from the first couple of days of her being here, and then today, she's taken quite a positive turn that you guys think at this point they're basically trying to get the fluid out of her lungs, and it looks like she's going in a really great direction.
Yeah, there's lots of vital signs. Every day they're talking about white blood cell counts and blood pressure and breathing capacity, and things sometimes are a little better one day, a little worse, or about the same. But really today was the first day they started using terms like she's turned the corner, she's out of the woods. They weren't telling us this is life and death, but it pretty much was.
Yeah.
And that's when you just have to completely trust the doctors are doing all they're doing, and they're focusing on, I remember at one point they said, right now what we're seeing is 75% good, 25% concerning. And that really means it's life or death, but we think we're on the right end of that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think from basically being non-responsive, even she was not on sedative. So when I first came to the hospital and saw her, I just assumed they had sedated her to the max, and she was just so weak that her eyes were closed and she wasn't responding to much of anything because her body was just working so hard to fight the infection. And now she doesn't like having wires attached to her. She's trying to get comfortable on the bed, but her eyes are open. She's aware, she's with us and kind of what's going on, and you can see she's finding ways to get comfortable with her pillows.
Yes.
She's herself again, even though she's sick.
We made eye contact, and I waved at her, and and it looks like that she's responding to a lot of that. I know that you and your wife are feeling a little more relief in that department. One of the things that I was talking to your wife with in the room, and that I know that you feel strongly about too, is being able to be here at this hospital and work with the team that you work with here regarding your daughter's case. You were talking about being out there with doctors during rounds when this is a public forum. They invite you to come out and talk to them. It's not in the secret it's all in front of you guys. They want you to be a part of it and a part of the process.
Right, and not just hearing what they're talking about, but they will turn to you and say, "What questions do you have?" And I can say, "I have a question for the neurologist, or I have a question for that nurse, or I have a question for that. You know, what does that term mean? And what if that doesn't work? What are you going to do next?" And it's become very clear that through all this, they've always had a plan A, and then a plan B, and then a plan C. And when we ask how she's doing, they'll focus on the things that are going well. For in her case, it's been she's breathing on her own. That's really good.
Right.
It's really good that we haven't had to intubate her. She's breathing on her own, so that's a good sign. But they also weren't glossing over that it was serious, but they were just very upfront. If you see all of her vital signs, what does that number mean? What does that number mean? That one looks lower. That one is higher. And they'll explain like, oh, that's because we just took a blood. She was uncomfortable. That went up, but we know it's going to come down.
Right. Right.
And when they're doing an ultrasound, you're in the room looking at the screen saying, what's that on the screen? So everything is just very open and transparent. They want you to know, and they really welcome your involvement in the care.
It's an amazing, amazing team that works for every child's case. You know, we were in some of the units earlier today and talking to some of the head nurses, and they were talking about how every kid's case is different. Every child's case is different, so they have to respond in that way. We have been so fortunate to be doing this for 3 years now, this radiothon, and our community's stepping up every year and giving money to this fantastic hospital that saves lives every day. And why do you think it's so important that they give, and that, I mean, they're giving on Chloe's behalf, they're giving on other kids' behalf that we've met today?
Well, this would have been a different conversation a couple of days ago, and when I knew the radiothon was going to be here, and I knew one way or another I was going to be here, I said, I want to do this. I didn't know where Claire would be at the time, and no matter what, though, I wanted people to know that there are real kids like Chloe in the hospital right now. I know sometimes we tell stories about kids who were treated and now they're doing so great, but I think it's important for people to understand that there are kids like Chloe who are really fighting for their lives right now, and that donations mean that we have the best possible care. We have the support of specialists like the intensive care nurses who will come to her bedside and call her girlfriend and sweetheart and honey. We were here for Halloween, and they brought her a stuffed animal, and she doesn't need candy right now, but they just make it very special, and philanthropy makes that possible. It's partly the people, it's also the facilities and the equipment and the research. All of that goes together, and this level of care wouldn't be possible without donors.
That's why we would love for you to give. It's 1-800-685-1015 if you want to make the call, be a miracle maker, and do it on behalf of Chloe and her family, who are right here in the hospital right now, and she is fighting to get better every single day, and we're glad to see that it's taken a positive turn. Mark, thanks for sharing this time with me. I know this is a sensitive time for you and your family, and we're thinking about Chloe and hope she continues to get better.
Thank you. Happy to do it.